Steinfast. I'm with iMortgage. I can be reached at 941-916-8001, or you can email me at kelly.steinfast@imortgage.com. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the whole process of getting a mortgage these days. A lot has changed since October 3rd of 2015. In the mortgage industry, we have a new thing called TRID, and TRID has made timing of everything extremely important. Now, what I'd like to do is start at the very beginning. You hear me talk about the Consumer Federal Protection Bureau website. This is an excellent website. Whether you've bought a home in the past or you're a first-time home buyer, go to this website. They have information for you on what forms you're going to see, what you should do, how to choose a lender, and it goes through the whole process. There's even a little calculator on there where you can find out what the interest rates are in your state. So if you know what your credit score is, you can put that in with your state, and it's going to tell you where you're going to fall on an interest rate, so you don't come in thinking, why am I not getting 3.25%? That's what I hear the national average is. It shows you, because maybe your credit score is a 360, you're not going to always get that best rate. So it just depends on what's out there. So the first thing you're going to want to do before you even talk to a lender is go to annualcreditreport.com. This is the website that's set up by all three of the credit reporting agencies. Go out there and just get a free credit report. Don't pay for your score, just get a free credit report. If everything is reporting correctly on that credit report, your score is going to be decent. Some of the things though that on that, say everything's reporting, you don't have any 30-day lates, 90-day lates, 60-day lates, but you also want to look at where you are with your balance on your credit cards. If your limit is $2,500, you don't want to have a balance of $2,000 on that credit card, because that's going to bring your score down. You want to stay at 30% of your limit on credit cards to help keep your score. The next thing you're going to want to do is find a lender. Now, whether you use me or someone else, things you want to ask your lender. When is the underwriter going to see my file after it's submitted? How long does it take for you to order my appraisal? And what documents are you going to need? I will tell you this. This is how we do it. And I worked with another company and I know how they do it. And I kind of have an idea how the banks are doing it. So, when you come to me to do a mortgage and you get an accepted contract, once I have that contract, I have to go through your file, make sure I have your payroll, and my delegated underwriting sheet is going to tell me if I only need one paycheck stub or a month's worth, W-2s, and tax returns. And when I ask for the tax returns, I mean every single page of that tax return. I don't care if it's 100 pages long. I need the whole thing. And include the W-2s. Make sure they're in there. Bank statements. I need to know where your money is coming from. I only need really that statement. So if it's coming from your Edward Jones account, I just need that Edward Jones account statement. I don't need the bank statement. And when I ask for bank statements, I need every single page of that bank statement. Even if it's a blank page, I need it. Because what's going to happen is the underwriter is going to go through and see you've got paid, it says the statement is 1 through 8 and you're missing page 8. Why don't I have 8 in there? Even though it's blank, they don't know that. They think you're hiding something. So you need every single page of that. And don't redact anything on that statement. I just had a client submit me his bank statement, 2 pages, and he redacted everything just to show his gift fund deposits coming in. So I had to come up, thank you very much for getting this to me, but I can't have it redacted.
What's redacted?
Redacted means they'll go through and he blocked out literally all of his transactions, so you couldn't see what the amounts were, you couldn't see what he was doing, what was coming through the account, you couldn't see any of that. I don't know why we can't have it redacted, but I know that an underwriter would not accept those statements. So once I have tax returns, W-2s, whether 1 or 2 years, I go by that delegated underwriting worksheet that I get once I get your loan application, and I run it through that to see if you qualify for the program. So that's going to tell me what I need. Once I have all of that information and your accepted offer, then I can submit the file into setup. File goes into setup. We have 24, right now we are at a 24 to 48 hour turnaround on that. So that means when your file gets in there, it gets put into a queue. And where it comes up next, that's when they'll get to your file to go ahead and print up your disclosures and email them to you. Very important, when you get that email, we need you, and this is something because of TRID, we cannot order your appraisal and go forward with this loan until you open that email and give us what's called an e-consent. So you e-consent that yes, I want to move forward with this transaction. You go through the documents, and we have to give you the home buyer toolkit, and that's something that's on the CFPB site, and then we give you your disclosures. The first disclosure you're going to get is called a closing disclosure, and this is a new document. So if you bought a home before, you have not seen this document. If you bought it before 2010 and 2015, you have not seen this document before. I want to kind of hide. I didn't redact it. But it starts with the loan amount and it goes through all your closing costs. And I have to have something like this. This is what we call an LE, a loan estimate. This is from the title company. What this does is it tells me the title company fees. I have to have that exact. I have no room to have that wrong. Now, the title insurance is something that you can shop for, but it depends on the county you're in here in Florida on whether or not you get to pick that title company or the buyer is picking that title company. And as Sue will tell you, it's always negotiable. Lee County and Charlotte County are like that. Sarasota County, the buyer picks it. So I have to get this too in the file, going back. So I get it all submitted, you get that, you e-consent, and then I'm going to go back through and there's some documents that I need you to actually print up and sign. That being your consent to continue, there's a borrower's affidavit, there's a 4506T form, and a Social Security form. And then if it's an FHA loan, there's several FHA forms that have to get signed, and then the application. So we get all of that in. Now your loan gets moved on after you've consented. I've called you, gotten a credit card number for the appraisal. Doesn't mean we're gonna charge that credit card for it, but we need that credit card because if you, yes?
Somebody wants to know what a 4506T is.
A 4506T is a document that we use to get your tax transcripts. What we do is, because there's fraud with mortgages, is you give us your tax returns, we go to the IRS and we get a copy of that tax return and we compare them to make sure there's no fraud going on. And you'll sign one of those again at closing because if the file gets quality controlled audited, they'll want to go back and get fresh transcripts, get their own transcripts. So you'll sign that at closing also. So now you'll get assigned a processor. Order the appraisal, the processor gets in the file, and at that point that processor takes over. Looks at the file, makes sure everything's in there, that I've submitted everything, moves it to the underwriter. So your file, realistically with iMortgage, can be to the underwriter within 3 days. And that's very important, you guys, because if your lender is not getting that file to the underwriter in the beginning, what happens is at the end, if something's not right and you didn't catch it and your processor didn't catch it, it blows up. And now this person has told their landlord they're moving, has started packing, and you're telling them, I'm sorry, Mr. Customer, we can't close because of this. So it's very important that it gets to the underwriter and you get a conditional approval. Conditional approval is great. I never want to see a suspend on one of my files. So what happens then? Goes back after the underwriter's looked at it, and again, that's a 24 to 48 hour turnaround right now with our company with what we have coming in. Then sends it back to the processor. Again, our processor goes through the file, and you have to understand your file is not the only file on their desk. Your file is not the only file in the queue. So you're wondering, well, what takes so long? You just turn the underwriter and now go work on it. It doesn't work that way. We have to keep it, there's other people too that are trying to close. My sales manager always recommends for realtors to set the closing date between the 10th and the 20th because that's the slowest time for closings. If it's at the end of the month, you've got them trying to shove everything through for the end of the month, and then whatever doesn't close spills over to the beginning of the month. So usually between the 10th and the 20th is a good time to close on a mortgage. So once it gets back from the underwriter, and if there's any conditions that they need, usually it's your homeowner's insurance because we haven't had that yet. Appraisal, of course, because we've ordered that and that hasn't come in yet. Anything else in our company, the underwriter cannot go back and say, well, I got this Edward Jones statement, but I really am not comfortable with it. It goes back 90 days, but I think we should go back 6 months and ask for another statement. Our underwriters can't do that. I just had that happen where the underwriter, on my DU statement, it said 1 paycheck stub and a W-2 from last year. The underwriter came back in condition for the 2014 W-2, and I told my processor, no, it says in DU, we don't need it. They can't ask for it. We didn't have to get it. Other places, the underwriter will go and ask for these feel-good conditions, and I mean, you're on a paper chase with that. So then, once it gets back to my processor, they look at it, they wait for that 4506T. He sends or she sends that into the government. That takes about 7 days to get back. We wait for the appraisal to get back. Once the appraisal's back, if you're in a flood zone, I'm going to order that survey right away, because if I don't, I need to get that elevation certificate for your property so you can get your flood insurance. Because we can't get to closing and get disclosed to you all your closing costs until we have all the insurances. Because that's something that we have to have that closing disclosure right. Even though it's something you're shopping for, we don't want to have to change that at the end, especially for escrowing. Everyone knows what escrowing is? So once we get the appraisal back and that's good, and we've got your insurance and all of that, then it goes to closing. And with iMortgage, I have to have my processor, my team, has to have your file ready to go into closing 14 days prior. Because it's going to sit there for 2 days waiting for closing department to pick it up to get that, what we call a CD, a closing disclosure ready. Goes through all the fees and everything. They send that to you. When you get that, you need to go in and open that email and consent that yes, you have received this. That is the most important thing. And what's usually happened at that point with us is your file probably hasn't seen the underwriter to tick off those final conditions, but we at least have that CD out, so when it does go to the underwriter, if there's something last minute we need or we forgot, we can get that, and it's not going to delay our closing because we are that many days ahead of the closing. I just had a client, she was buying a home and she was buying it for her son, so it had to be an investment property. She went to get the insurance, she kept asking me, well, my son's going to be living in it, can I have the insurance as owner-occupied? I said, he's not on the loan, he's not on the title, it's an investment property, you cannot have an owner-occupied policy. She went ahead and got an owner-occupied policy. We had everything in, we had the CD disclosed, but when it got back to the underwriter, she's like, no, this isn't right. So we had to stop, wait for that insurance company to revise that for her, and that delayed closing because we had to redisclose that to her. Because if it's not right, we have to start all over again, especially if we're escrowing. You don't want to have us get those numbers wrong. Thank you. So once we get to that point, then and the underwriter is signed off on everything, everything's good, it's going to go into closing. Again, 24 to 48 hours in closing, where depends on where you're at in the queue. And when I start seeing docs are out, and then I see the funders assigned, and I start seeing numbers going back and forth between the title company, I know we're good. So that's it in a nutshell. And that's why it takes longer than 30 days these days to get a file closed. It's 40 to 45 days, and banks are taking 60. So, any questions? Carmela?
You're a cash buyer that doesn't exist then, right?
A cash buyer, no. Cash is so easy. Yeah, you can close them probably within a week, 2 weeks. Right, Sue? Yeah.
They don't do a background check where the cash is coming from, do they?
No, because it's usually in their account and they're wiring the money. It's not like they're walking in with 200,000 cash. So it's mostly done in wires. Yes, and when you're buying a home, plan on wiring the money to the title company. You cannot walk in with a cashier's check anymore or a personal check, only because there's so much fraud going on with banks right now with the cashier's checks. It's really sad. So, anyone else? All right, you guys, thank you very much. Again, Kelly Steinfast with iMortgage, where I take an interest in you.